Welcome to Live DAF, your online DAF Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's DAF, Bava Basra Memtes. We're holding on the fourth line off the top. Gufa, let's go back and review the halacha that we learned yesterday. Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman tells us, let's say we have a loan document, a shtar choiv, that Reuven borrowed $1 million from Shimon. And we have Edom signed on that shtar. But the Edom come along and tell us an interesting story. Amana hayu dvarenu. Amana comes from the word emuna, trust. What happened was, we were asked to sign this document ahead of time, in advance of the actual issuance of the loan. So the borrower trusted the lender that he's not going to capitalize on the shtar unless he actually issues him a loan. So we cooperated, we went along with it, we did him that favor, we signed him the shtar, even though there was no loan yet issued. Amana hayu dvarenu. So you should know, the document is not forged, it's legitimate, but it was never actually actualized, it wasn't activated. Amana hayu dvarenu. Ein amana, we can't believe them because they're undoing their written and signed testimony. The halacha is kivan shehigid. Once an aid offers testimony, einay chayzer umagid. You can't go back on that. You can't retract his statement. The shtar indicates that there was a loan. You can't go back on that. Can't try to undo that. Amana hayu dvarenu, einay amanan. Another example, likewise, maida hayu dvarenu. It's a sale, a purchase document, indicating that Reuven sold this house to Shimon. The Edom are signed on it, and they're conceding that it's a legitimate document, unforged, right? Real, authentic signatures. But Maida hayu dvarenu, you should know that a day before, the seller indicated to us that he was being forced to do this sale. He was issuing a disclaimer in our presence. So basically what they're trying to do is undo the effect of the sale document. Ein ne'eman, and once again we can't believe it. That's Rav Nachman's opinion. He considers this to be a sort of a retraction of the written word. So no trust there, no ne'emanos. Umar bar Rav Ashi Omar, he disagrees slightly. He says, look, theoretically, conceptually, it's not considered a retraction. You're not really going back on your word. You're just adding another element, another important factor to know. It's like, Rashbam says, it's like a condition. Right? You're agreeing that the shtar is kosher, but you're saying, look, there was something added to it. There's some other element that you must know of, that you should be apprised of. It's just an amana. It's after a maida. So it's not considered a retraction. I'm not going back on what I'm just adding another layer of information, which, by default, puts limitations and restrictions on the written document. So in terms of chayzer or magid, there's no issue. However, says Mabar Rav Ashi, let's split the two cases. Let's differentiate. Mabar Rav Ashi Omar, amana hayu dvarenu ein amanan. If they should come back and say this was just a matter of trust between the lender and the borrower, it was never really carried out, the loan was never issued, they're not believed. But maida hayu dvarenu. But if they shall say that this was issued after a disclaimer the day before, in this case ne'eman, they're believed. Now what's the difference between the two? My taima shezeh nitan li kasev. A maida is a perfectly legitimate procedure. Nitan li kasev, it's meant to be done, meaning if the Edom were made aware of this compelling situation of this fellow being blackmailed into selling, of course they're meant to cooperate with him and hear him out and be there when he disclaims and follow through on the shtar and just cooperate so that they can come back and help him. So that's a fine arrangement. It's perfectly legitimate. So we believe them on that. V'zeh, but amana, lo nitan li kasev, it's not a proper procedure. Rashbam brings a pasuk, al tishkan Bayalecha avla a pasuk in Iyov. You're not meant to have a shtar, a loan document written ahead of time. The lender might actually use it and might actually collect from lekuches. He might cash in on his lien, which is really predated to the actual loan. So you're not meant to do this. It's not a proper thing. It's not an honest, an erlicha type of thing to do. So basically what the Edom are doing, they're incriminating themselves. Rashbam says they're making themselves Russia by indicating that they cooperated in this with this process, with this procedure. So a person cannot turn himself into a Russia. A person is not in Heman. I can't say I did something wrong, because basically he's testifying against himself. You can't do that. So by default, when the Edom say this was really an amana, they're incriminating themselves, which they have no ne'emanas to do, and we can't accept it as fact. Okay, so if Edom signed on a document and they claim amana or maidah, Rav Nachman says in both cases no, it's considered a retraction. Marbar Ashi says it's not a retraction, but in the case of the amana, it's self-incrimination, which we don't accept. The Mishnah continues, you should know, should a husband claim ownership on his wife's possessions, it doesn't work. Well, Pshita, obviously, given the Islay lepera. Well, obviously, he can't claim ownership because it's part and parcel of their marital arrangement that a husband is entitled to reap the crop, the peiros, off his wife's properties. Let's say she has properties that are called nichsei malug, right? That she brings into the marriage, that she owns. He gets to eat the peiros, and it's part of the arrangement that the Chachamim arranged for them, that he, in exchange for eating her peiros, he provides her with a guarantee, an assurance that if she is taken captive, he'll go and redeem her, irrespective of the cost. He'll ransom her. So peiros are tachas per koina, pay and pay, so easy to remember. So he's entitled to the peiros in exchange for his per koina, in exchange for committing to redeem her if necessary. So we all know the reason for his peiros, unrelated to ownership. It's hers, but he's eating the peiros because of the Chachamim's takana. So how could he claim ownership? The answer is like this. We are speaking the cause of law that the husband had forfeited the rights to the peiros. The cause of law, he wrote her as follows: Dinu dvarim, einli b'nechasayich. Dinu dvarim is an expression like, I will have nothing to do with your properties. So since he's sort of relinquishing his rights, I have nothing to do with those properties, he shouldn't be taking the peiros. And if he is, and he's there a year, and another, he can claim ownership, he can claim chazaka. Asks the Gemara, but just writing it in this manner doesn't really affect a full relinquishment of rights. He has to give it away, he has to grant it. He can't just say, I'm backing off, I'm detaching myself. Once he has it, he has to give it away for it to be really be considered granted, right? Just because he wrote this type of language, mayhavi, it's ineffective. V'atanya, we learned in a brisa in the case of a partnership. Reuben tells us his partner Shimon, with whom he had this joint ownership of this property. Dinu dvarim einli al sadazu. I have nothing to do with this field. Ve'einli esek bo. V'yadai misolokos mimena. Different, various expressions of disengagement. Does that work? Does the property now revert fully to his partner's possession? No, lo yamar klum. It doesn't have any legal effect unless he actually gives it away as a matana. So the husband as well, just because he says dinu dvarim, doesn't change the equation. Amri lo ad Rabbi Yanai. So in the Beis Medrash, Rabbi Yanai, they explain that in fact in our Mishnah masnisin bekoisav lavoida rusa, he committed to her in this way before he actually had it. When you have it already, you have to, in order to get rid of it, you have to give it away. But here, he was not yet married. Va'ida Arusa, she was at this point still engaged to him, not yet married. So the peiros, the access to the peiros only happens once he marries. So he can preempt the acceptance of the peiros by saying, look, I want nothing to do with it. When you have it, when it's already yours, you have to give it away. But if it's not yet yours, you can sort of put a block on it. right? When the time comes, I don't want it. I don't want it coming into my possession. So this is an ineffective disengagement. Ukd Rav Kahana, as Rav Kahana tells us elsewhere, in a similar halacha, you can't force a person to accept something that was meant for his benefit. I mean, you just can't, right? Specifically if it's a takanas chachamim, that they did for his, benefit. Ukd Rav Kahana, nachla, an inheritance. We're not speaking about a Yerusha min HaTorah, you can't block that from coming. But a Yerusha min Rabbanan, like a Yerusha of his wife, or in the case of the payrois, these types of financial rights can be blocked ahead of time. Nachla habal adam makam achar. If a person's getting a nachla from elsewhere, adam masna aleo shlo yiroshena. A person can precondition ahead of time. I don't want it. Uked Rava, as Rava tells us regarding a similar halacha, that a person can refuse. He can turn down a financial arrangement that the Chachamim applied for his benefit. In this case, we're speaking about an Isha. If a person says, look, I'm uninterested in the Takanas Chachamim that was meant for my benefit, for instance, like this case, we'll see in a minute, yeah, okay, we accept it. What was Rava speaking about when he referenced specifically this? What is that? We all know that the Isha gets mezainis, right? The Chachamim were mesakin for her sake, that even though sometimes an Isha can earn some money and she has talents to earn income, but perhaps it won't suffice for her needs. The Chachamim said, look, the husband is responsible; he has to support her regardless of whether she earns or not, and in sort of an exchange, as a package deal, he gets her masi yadayim. Whatever she earns goes to him. Now let's say we have a very high earning woman, very successful woman. She's not interested in his peanut butter sandwiches, right? It doesn't match up to her income. So she might say, look, keep your sandwiches and I'll keep my income. She can do that because ultimately it was done for her sake, for her benefit. And that was Rav Huna's halacha. A married woman can turn to her husband and say, look, I am turning down your support, your mezoinos, your food, and I'm no longer going to supply you with my income. Okay, fair deal. You keep your food, I'll keep my money. Okay, so likewise in our story, with our Mishnah, regarding the Ish being machzik b'nichse ishtay, the question was, how could we even consider him as a chazaka? We all know that he's taking the pires via his rights granted to him by the Chachamim, that he gets the payers in exchange for offering to redeem her when necessary. The answer was he turned it down ahead of time. He gave up his rights to payers. So he shouldn't be taking her payers. And if he is doing it year after year, apparently it should denote ownership. Right? Nevertheless, says the Mishnah, you should know it doesn't work. It's not a chazaka, because after all, a wife isn't necessarily going to stand in her husband's way when he picks her bananas, right? So even though she didn't really sell it to him, but she'll just let him do what he needs to do. Okay, interestingly, the Rashbam learns that when a husband forfeits the payros, so since the payros were there as a package deal, he gets payros, she gets per koina, right? The redemption process, he is now absolved from that per koina. Taisus disagrees. He says Chacham would never allow that for concern that she might end up, getting entrapped by the goyim with nobody to redeem her. So even if he gives up the payros, he's still obligated to redeem her if necessary. Interesting side point. So the Mishnah clearly tells us that a husband's 3-year chazaka on his wife's assets don't indicate ownership. But let's say, raya. Yesh, but let's say he had a raya. He has Edom, or he has a shtar that he purchased her property. That's effective. That indicates ownership. Really, why? Raya yesh. Tema, she can always claim, well, look, I was trying to just be a good wife. I cooperated with him, but I didn't really sell it to him. Nachas ruach asisila bali. I never really wanted to sell it to him. But look, I figured, past of path of least resistance. Let me just cooperate with him. So it's not really a valid deal, as we find in a different halacha as well. Milay Tanan, haven't we learned in a Mishnah in a similar case? Suppose a husband who typically is really bound to his wife's ksuba payment, right? So anything that he owns, all his assets are really bound to that. So let's say he divorces her or he dies, she can collect from any one of his assets. Now let's say he sold one of his properties, and the buyer certainly can use it now during his lifetime, but let's say he'll pass away and she'll be owed her ksuba, she can turn around and collect from this property. So the buyer, a smart fellow, he says, look, I want to sort of get her out of the way. I want to buy her off. Buy out her rights to this asset. This way, even if it comes time to pay the ksuba, she won't harass me. So lokach meneish. So this buyer first went and purchased the property from the husband, and then, as a sort of an insurance policy, he went over to the isha and gave her a token amount. I want to get you off the case. V'chazav lokach meneish went back to the isha. He says, look, your husband sold me the property, but I know after all, you still have your rights, you still have your claims on this property. I want to sort of buy you out, buy her off. So he did that. Mikhay batla doesn't work. And if in fact she gets to the point that she'll collect her ksuba, she can collect from this asset. You know why? Even though it appears like she sold off her rights, Alma apparently Amra, she can claim Nachas Ruach Asisi Libali. I was just trying to satisfy my husband. It wasn't really something I wanted to do. I was forced into doing this. Hachanami, so here as well in our Mishnah. Certainly when it's between him and her and he's sort of getting her to sell him her properties, Tema, she can just say, Nachas Ruach Asisi Libali. I was just compelled. I felt forced. I was just trying to be nice to him, try to satisfy him. It wasn't really a legitimate and, Ha'itmar law. The answer is like this. Haven't we learned an explanation on that halacha with the customer, with the lakeach from the ish and the isha? It doesn't really pertain to all his assets. Amar Rabba Barav Huna le'nitzrucha. It only applies ela ba'oisam gimel sades, on very specific properties, 3 different types of properties, which are pretty much bound, are specifically bound to her ksuba payment. And in that case, she's totally relying on these properties, and therefore she didn't really mean to sell it off, and therefore she retains her rights on those fields. What are these 3 categories? Achas, one would be shekasal v'ksavasa, a specific field that he specified, the husband specified in the ksuba document, that if the day comes that you have to collect, you're going to collect from this field. So even though really all his assets are equally bound to her ksuba, but the fact is he singled it out, he identified it as a separate field bound to the ksuba, so she's sort of, connected to that field, and certainly she expects to collect from it. Va'achas sheyichad lo b'ksuvasa. Another case can be when he specified verbally, after they married, he says, look, this is going to be designated for the ksuba. Va'achas shechnisa lo shum meshalah. A third case would be a field that she brought in from her parents, and it was appraised and recorded in the ksuba, so that's certainly bound to the ksuba payment. So in these 3 situations, we apply this halacha and we say the sale is null and void. But otherwise, other assets, if she cooperated with the buyer and she went along with it and she sold it to him, we say it's a proper sale. Says Gemara, really? Lemutimai, you're singling out these 3 examples as opposed to what? As opposed to his other assets. That if she cooperated, we consider it a valid deal. If anything, quite the contrary. She's very much going to hesitate to stand in his way when it comes to other assets. When it comes to these assets, she has an alibi, she has an excuse. What are you selling these assets which you've specifically bound to my... So she has a right to sort of say, look, this is going a bit too far. But what business does she have? If anything, she's more intimidated when it comes to other assets, which were never really linked to the ksuba. Koshkin dahavi le'eva, because certainly that can generate an animosity between the couple. If she stands in his way of selling those properties, the Amrla, because he can tell her, he can turn around to her and say, look, why are you thinking about divorce and what's going on? You have your eyes on my death and our divorce. Why are you expecting to get your ksuba? Things are calm and serene and great, right? So if anything, she's even more hesitant to get in the way over there. The answer is like this. When we single out these three and we say no, as opposed to others, we mean nichsei maluk, which are her properties, totally her properties, right? Those are the properties that he can take the payers, but the actual principal belongs to her. So he has no business. He has no business selling that. So, yeah, in this type of case, if he sold it to a stranger, and then the stranger comes and, double buys it from the isha, meaning he sort of gives her pays her a token amount to sort of confirm and certify the sale, she can't claim that she was just doing it to satisfy the husband, because there's absolutely no basis, no justification for selling her property. She should not have cooperated. Okay? So back to our Mishnah. A husband has no chazaka in his wife's nechasim, but let's say he claims to have purchased it from her, and we're speaking about nichsei maluk. Why would she have sold it to him? So if he brings a raya that he bought it, it's his. It's his. Okay, we'll pick it up tomorrow, Be'ez Hashem, but as a short summary, we learned about the Eidim going back on their written word. It's just Maidah, it's just Amana. Rav Nachman says it doesn't work. Rav Ashi says Amana, well, that's self-incriminatory, it doesn't work, but Maidah works. A husband has no chazak of nichsei ishta, even though he ate peiros many years running. And we're speaking where, even if he gave up his rights to the peiros, by saying, look, I'm not interested in doing this ahead of time, right? Before he got the rights to the peiros, so he really shouldn't be taking it. Still, even if he's on the field eating the peiros, perhaps the wife is just, swallowing it, not getting in his way, but doesn't necessarily denote ownership. But if he has a right that he bought it, she wouldn't have gone that far, and of course, that is a raya to his ownership. All the best to you, and atzlacha rabba, b'suras teves.